Hello, Math and C Prep. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to do lesson 3.4, and we're going to talk about finding some x and y values. And we're going to do that on graphs, and then we're also going to do that with equations. So, before we get into all that, let's just remind ourselves a little bit about graphs. So, let's look at these two lines. Look at this line right here. This line that we have, this blue line, represents a whole bunch of coordinates that go together. So for instance, like if I pick any spot on this line, I'm going to pick let's go here. I have to have a way to describe where that point is. The way we describe that point is by using x and y coordinates. X is always the first one, y is always the second one. X tells you how far you need to move left or right from the middle of the graph. And the Y value tells you how far you have to move up or down from the center of the graph. For this question, if I go from the center of the graph, I would have to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right. So my x value would be 5. And I would have to move 1, 2, 3, 4 units up. I would describe this point as being at x equals 5 and y equals 4. And I can do that for literally every little tiny spot that you see on this line. Even decimals, right? Like this technically has an x value and a y value. The x value, I can actually tell, this thing is 4 to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's x equals 4. The y value is a little bit harder because it's 1, 2, 3, and then it's kind of like a half, maybe a little bit more than a half. It's about like 3.6, we'll say. But that point has a value. And you could stop anywhere on that line and it would have x values and y values to help you locate where it is. We'll do a couple more. So if I look at this point right here, that point has an x value of 0 because I never move left or right from the center. And it has a y value of 2 because it's 2 up from the center. Another point that I could do would be over here. If I wanted to describe that point, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the left. So the x value would be -5. Negative means you're going left, and then it's 5. The y value of that yellow point would be 0 because I haven't moved up or down. Whoa, something crazy is going on. There we go. That's what x and y values are. It's ways of guiding you to be on a map if you were to talk about a coordinate plane and a graph. If we look over here, there's another one. You could do the same thing. So if you want to pause, actually don't pause just yet. I'm going to mark some points. I want you to see if you can find the x values and the y values for the 3 points that I give you. Those 3 red dots. So pause the video, unpause the video, see if you can find those points. Cool. Hopefully you did that. This one would have been 5 to the left and then 4 up. So we should say -5, 4. Or you could also write it as x equals -5, y equals 4. This one right here, we would describe as x equals -1, because I went 1 to the left, and then y equals 2. If you wanted to write that a little simpler, we just go -1, 2. And this one right here, we went 5 to the right, so x would equal 5. And we went 1 down, so it would be -1 for your y value. If you wanted to write it quicker, you go x first, y second, 5, -1. Cool. That should hopefully be review for you. What we're going to do now is we're going to take lines and we're going to try to find missing values. So for instance, if we have this graph right here, they want us to find the y coordinate for the given x coordinate. So what that means is they want you on this graph to figure out what y is when you move 2 to the right. So how far up or down would you have to go to hit that line after you go 2 to the right? So if we think about it, start from the middle, x equals 2, so I go 2 to the right. To find your y value, you're going to have to go up or down. In this case, I would have to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I would finally get that point. That point is x equals 2, y equals 5. So for this equation, when x equals 2, y would equal 5. Like that. And we can repeat this over and over and over again. So the next one says, when x equals -2, what would y be? So -2 means you go 2 to the left from the center. So I go 1, 2. And now how far up or down, or what would the y value be to hit that line? In this case, if I went down 1, 2, 3, I would hit this point. That's an x value of -2, a y value of -3. I went 3 down. Awesome. We can do the last two here. So this one says, what happens when x equals 0? So you don't go left or right at all from the center. If you went 1 up, that means y would equal 1, and I would be on my graph. The last one, what happens when x equals -3? So if you went 3 to the left, 1, 2, 3, how far up or down would you have to go to hit the line? Well, I'd have to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I get that point right there at -5. Cool. Remember that these graphs can also be represented as equations. That's what we learned yesterday. So this graph, in fact, this nice blue line, can be represented by this equation right here. And that equation is y equals 2x plus 1. That's the same thing as this line. So that means I should also be able to use the equation to find y values when I know my x value. So let's look and see how that works. The question says, find y when x equals 2. The way that you're going to do that is you're going to take your equation, so y equals 2x plus 1, and you are going to change x to be 2, so that you now have only your y value missing. When we change a letter to a number, it's called substitution, and we're going to put it in brackets like that. You can then calculate this. Put that in your calculator. That is 2 times 2 plus 1. If you put 2 times 2 plus 1 in your calculator, it's 5. And that tells you that when your x value is 2, your y value will be 5. And sure enough, if we look at our graph, this point right here has an x value of 2 and a y value of 5. So it actually was on our line. Cool. Let's do a few more. So this one says x equals -2. So let's go to our original formula, which is 2x plus 1. And let's change x to be -2. When we change a letter to be a number, we put brackets. So x turns into -2 like that, and then +1. And then we just calculate this. So put that in your calculator. If you put brackets and you use negative numbers properly, the negative numbers at the bottom of your calculator beside your decimal, you should get that your answer is -3. That means that when x equals -2, y equals -3. Next one. Take your original formula, so y equals 2x plus 1. They have told you x equals -1, so go and change x to be -1. When you change something, you use brackets, and that's called substituting. You now have an equation where the only thing you don't know is y, so you can calculate everything else. When you calculate all that, you end up getting -1. So when x equals -1, y equals -1. And the last one, x equals 5. We go to our equation, and we change this to be 2 times 5 plus 1. This is 10, or turns out to be 11. So that means when x equals 5, y equals 11. The graphs are probably quicker and easier if you're good at them. However, the equation can give us answers that we can't see on a graph. For instance, we just found out that when x equals 5, y equals 11. If you look at this graph, we can't even see that point. When x equals 5, it's somewhere up here. So the graph is limited in what it can do. The equation can tell you any y value for any x value. So the equation is definitely the better way to do things because it can tell you more. Wicked. That's how we find missing y values. You technically can go the other way around too. So you could be given y values and find x values. Like this question right here says, okay, when y equals 2, how far left or right or left, would you have to go to hit the line? So imagine you started in the middle. You went up 2. 1, 2. How far left or right do you have to go to get to the line? In this case, I would have to go 1 to the left to get to the line. 1 to the left means -1. And I can do it again with the next one. It says, okay, what about when y equals 3? So if you start in the middle and you went 3 up, 1, 2, 3. Now the question is, how many left or right do you have to go to hit the line? Because you're looking for x, and x is left or right. In this case, I'd have to go 1, 2, 3 to the left. That's -3, and I would be on my line. This next one says, what if you don't move up or down? Y equals 0, so I don't move up or down. How much to the left or right would I have to go to hit the line? In this case, I'd have to go to the right, 1, 2, 3, and I'd have x equals 3. My last one, y equals -1, so I've gone 1 down. How much to the left or right would I have to go to hit the line? I have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right to hit the line. So when y equals -1, x equals 5. Wicked. Now, graphically, that's not much harder. Using an equation, finding x values is a little bit trickier. So we'll look and see what this kind of looks like. So we have our equation, y equals -2x plus 1.5. And then we have some questions here. This one says y equals 2, what is x? So you're going to go back to your original equation. This is the original equation, -2x plus 1.5. And you are going to change y to be 2. When you do that, we get good practice by putting brackets around it. Now after we did that step, we could just calculate things. In this case, we can't. And the reason we can't is because x is not by itself. So we need to get x by itself. We did do this in Math 9. So the way that you isolate x or get x all by itself is by moving this 2 and moving this 1.5 so that they're on the other side of the equal sign. You always have to move the additions and the subtractions first. So when I decide which thing has to move first, I have to move the plus 1.5 first. The way that you move something is by doing the opposite operation. This is plus 1.5. The opposite of adding is subtracting 1.5. If I was to subtract 1.5, these two things would cancel each other out, and now the 1.5 wouldn't be there anymore. To balance that out, I have to also subtract 1.5 from the left side. Because what you do to one side, you do to the other side. This will give me a new equation. 2 minus 1.5 is 0.5. On the right-hand side of the equal sign, I still just have 2x. Now I need to move this 2. This 2 is being multiplied by the x, right? Because there's nothing in between the 2 and the x. The opposite of multiply is dividing by 2. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. So I also divide the other side by 2. If you put that in your calculator, you get 0.25 equals x. And now you know that when y equals 2, x equals 0.25. Awesome. Second one, we're going to do the same thing. So go to your original equation, which is negative 2x plus 1.5, and change y to be 3. That means I have 3 on the left-hand side now equals negative 2x plus 1.5. To find out what x equals, I need to move those numbers away from the x side of the equal sign. The first one I have to move is the 1.5. The way I move it is by doing the opposite of plussing, which is subtracting. What you do to one side, you must do to the other side. So 3 minus 1.5 is 1.5. On the right-hand side, I still have negative 2x. Oh, I just realized that this should have been a negative 2 on this side. So negative 2. That means this should have been divided by negative 2, which should have been negative 0.25x. Sorry. Now, if I'm on this question over here, I need to somehow move this negative 2 to the other side. That negative 2 is being multiplied by x because there's nothing in between them. And the opposite of multiply is divide. So I need to divide both sides by negative 2. This will cancel out on that side so that it's gone. And on this side, I would have negative 0.75. The right side, all I have left is x. This means that when y equals 3, my x value would be negative 0.75. There's 2 more. If you want to pause and then try them on your own and then come back and see if you got them right, that'd be wonderful. All right. The third one that says y equals negative 1. So I go to my original formula. I'm going to change y to be negative 1. So I go negative 1 equals negative 2x plus 1.5. I need to get x by itself. I do that by moving any additions or subtractions to the other side of the equal sign. This is a plus 1.5. You move things by doing the opposite because it cancels them out. What you do to one side, you do to the other. Negative 1.5 minus 1, minus 1, negative 1.5. Wow, Mr. Kennedy's tired. Negative 1 minus 1.5 would give you negative 2.5. And on the right-hand side, all I'm left with is negative 2. That's negative 2 times x, so the opposite of timesing is dividing. So I divide both sides by negative 2. In this case, my answer would become positive 1.25. Like that. Beautiful. Last one, and then we're done. You would have changed y to be 5. So I have 5 equals negative 2x plus 1.5. You need to move that 1.5 over, so we're going to subtract 1.5 from both sides. That gives me 3.5 equals negative 2x. And then we divide to get rid of that negative 2. That gives me an answer of negative 1.75 equals x. And now you know how to use graphs and how to use equations to find x and y values when you know the other value. There's some practice on your Google Classroom for you to work on. Tomorrow we have a quiz. The quiz is not for marks. It's open book. You could just try your best. It's just kind of a check-in to see how you're doing in this unit. Take care. I will see you soon.